Wow. Thank you all for joining.
So we'll get started, but first, just want to introduce myself. I'm Nicole Sapinski, and I'm part of the CDCP team. You're going to hear from You're going to hear from Corinne, Jasmine, and Njaimeh and Njie. But first, I'm going to tell you a little bit about Zoom for those of you who are not familiar. I'm sure a lot of you have been in plenty of Zoom calls, but if you go to the top of your screen and select view options, you can select side by side, and this will ensure that images aren't interrupted. At the top right, you can also toggle between gallery view and speaker view. Gallery view will let you see who is in the community, and speaker view will show you who is talking. And then finally, as a reminder, this is a community safe space. So please keep that in mind as you use the chat feature and have your cameras on. And I'm going to hand it over to Corinne.
All right, thank you. Hi, everybody who is here right now. Thank you for coming. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Corinne Jasmine. So I am the concept facilitator for Small Mall. We're based in Lawrenceville. So I operate the events and programming in the space. And if you guys aren't familiar, Small Mall is an art shop, an arts marketplace in Lawrenceville on the 5300 block. That's our address, 5300 Butler Street, and we sell the work of all local artists. So we are open physically if you all would like to come down and say hello. We are open Friday through Sunday, obviously with safety precautions, and you have to come in and wear a mask and hand sanitize right away, all of the things, 11 a.m. through 4 p.m. But we are open online 24/7 if you guys would like to shop the works from local artists. And tonight we are kind of conjoining Photo Fair, PGH Photo Fair, which is supposed to be happening at the Carnegie Museum of Art, but COVID restrictions. So in lieu of that, we are kind of doing photo-based artist talks, these tiny talks with photographers in the region. So, and Njaimeh and Njie is one of them who we reached out to do this with. And these talks are thanks to the William T. Hillman Foundation and the folks at Photo Fair. So for those of you who aren't familiar, there's different vendors and galleries that are usually in the Hall of Sculpture at the Carnegie Museum of Art in the springtime, but COVID kind of pushed that back for us, but we're just still trying to get that moving here. But without further ado, I will introduce you, and Njaimeh, I'm going to read this bio here I have for you, but just so everybody knows, like Nicole said, this is a safe space, so you can type in the chat, everybody's going to be able to see it. This is going to be a Q&A as well as a conversation. So if you do want to ask the question yourself to Njaimeh, you can just raise your hand and we will unmute you so you can ask, which we do encourage. But if you're feeling a little shy, you can type the question in here on the side and then I'll read it out loud. But I'm going to introduce Njaimeh. So Njaimeh Njie is a photographer, filmmaker, multimedia producer. Her work documents contemporary Black life with a particular focus on how the past shapes the present. And Njie's work has been featured in outlets including City Lab, Belt Magazine, and the Carnegie Museum of Art Storyboard blog. And she has presented at venues including TEDx Pittsburgh Women, Harvard University, Carnegie Mellon University, among several other awards and grants. And Njie was named the 2019 Visual Artist of the Year by the Pittsburgh City Paper, the 2019 University August Wilson House Fellow, and the 2018 Emerging Artist of the Year by the Pittsburgh Center for the Arts. And Njie earned her BA in Film and Media Studies in 2010 from Washington University in St. Louis. So, Njaimeh, do you want to take it away?
Sure. Thank you for having me. Thank you for that introduction. Yeah, I appreciate being here with you all today. So as Corinne said, I'm just gonna start off a little bit with some slides to show you some of my previous work and some of my latest work, and then we'll get into the conversation. Feel free to drop things in the chat as I go. I'll try to check in, just let me know you're there, because it's actually kind of strange presenting to all of you all in this format. But here we go. So again, I'm Njie, photographer, filmmaker, multimedia producer, born and raised in Pittsburgh. Pittsburgh Public Schools, like very much so, like Pittsburgh through and through. I moved away to go to college. I went to college in St. Louis, and then I taught high school English for 3 years at Northwest Academy of Law, before traveling for a little bit and then returning back to Pittsburgh. Because I had a feeling I wanted to transition into a career in media, but I wasn't really sure what that would look like. So that was almost 7 years ago that I moved back. And I've just been kind of like piecing things together ever since. But I'll just kind of talk about the projects that I've done to this point. I'd say I started my career as an artist in 2015. With this project, Powered by Grace, Musings on Black Womanhood. I really wanted to talk to Black women about how they define themselves and how they were experiencing the city of Pittsburgh, because I know there's been a lot of research, there have been studies put out talking about the poor quality of life for Black women in Pittsburgh, but I just wanted to go to the source, because I know when I looked around, I saw wonderful women with rich lives that I was in community with. And so I wanted to just check in with them and create some sort of visual documentation of how they were experiencing their lives here in the city. So Powered by Grace was a combination of like candid street photography, it was portraits, and it was a 5-part documentary series, in which I interviewed 14 Black women and girls about their lives in Pittsburgh. Next, I got the opportunity in 2017 to travel to Paris with the beyond brilliant scholar Mamfatou Niang, who is a professor at CMU, who is doing an incredible body of work around Blackness in France. And so Paris Noir was a photo project in which Mamfatou interviewed Black Muslims in Paris, and I took their photos. So these are a few excerpts from that. Really kind of a transformational experience for me. Next up, I was selected as the Emerging Artist of the Year by the Pittsburgh Center for the Arts in 2018. And On the Daily was the exhibition that I put together, really thinking about, again, Black experiences in Pittsburgh, but this time trying to like match portraits and kind of like looking at Black people, Black bodies, and how we show up on the physical landscape of the city. So pairing these portraits, these candid shots, these street photographs with landscapes, and thinking about how the physical landscape of Pittsburgh kind of conveys some things about the Black experience here. I should say Black experiences, because there is no such thing as like a singular Black experience. Next is probably my most substantial body of work to this point, Homecoming, Hill District, USA. So that was about a 3-year process. It was a commission through the city's Office of Public Art. That's GPAC, Greater Pittsburgh Art Council, the Office of Public Art, and Neighborhood Allies, which is a local nonprofit. And I was selected by the Hill District community to create a community-sourced public art project. So I spent literally months into years interviewing people, doing archival research, taking pictures, and trying to find like a visual language for what people were telling me about their experiences on the Hill, and also trying to reconcile that with what story history told. So the history books versus / in conjunction with what people were saying about their own lives. This is one of 4 public installations. This was actually the last of the 4 created, called The Anchors. It's on the stairs of the Kaufman Auditorium in the Hill. And really what I was trying to do with these installations was, again, put Black people onto the physical landscape of the city to help anybody who's passing by imagine and really like hold in their hearts like, who has inhabited this space in this neighborhood. In addition to the installations, I wanted to do something with the oral history interviews that I collected because, you know, people just speak so beautifully and so eloquently about their own experiences. And so even if I could take like a little piece of that, I thought that was important to add to the record. So this is like a little fast forwarded clip of, if you go to the website, it's still up, it's hillhomecoming.com. You get the full experience, but this is what I did with the oral histories. So I kind of structured it like a book with chapters, and I broke it down both chronologically and thematically. And so you can go and click through and read short excerpts from the interviews. And also I paired them with photos that people donated that kind of worked well with what they had shared with me. And it's roughly 100-year history of the Hill. So the oldest story comes from, you know, someone's descendant who came to the neighborhood in like the 19 teens, all the way up through the present, people who I went to school with and count as friends. All right, so moving more into kind of where I'm at now. So this was an installation at the airport called Uplifted. It was up this past December through March. This was kind of another step in the direction of photo montage, of collage. I wanted to show people who are coming through the airport, whether they're native Pittsburghers or whether they're just visiting or passing through, kind of like what moving through the city feels like to me. So I took a compilation of pictures that I had taken. So that's on the bottom level. And I stitched those together. So these are buildings from different neighborhoods. There's Lawrenceville, there's East Liberty, there's downtown, there's the north side, there's the south side. So really trying to pull from different parts of town, but then to create this like fictional cityscape. So this is what Pittsburgh kind of looks like to me if I were just to think of a mental snapshot in my brain. But then above, I have closer shots of Black people and also spaces that feel more intimate and familiar to me. And so I wanted to put like these people and these places above the fray, like literally elevate them above kind of the conglomeration of the city, to think about like who we privilege and who we really pay attention to when we talk about a city, especially one like Pittsburgh, where we know Black folks don't have the easiest time. And so that brings us to my current body of work. This is actually the first time I'm talking about it out loud, so we're gonna just get through this together. I'm currently in the Distillery 10 cohort at the Brewhouse Association. It's a residency program where we get a year of studio space and professional development. There are 7 of us overall in the cohort. 6 of us are exhibiting in our final group show. Shout out to everyone, all of my fellow cohort members who really worked hard to contribute work to this show. And also shout out to Natalie Sweet, program director, who like literally pulled it all together in the space. So the show is called Seeking Truth. And my particular work, which you can see on the wall in the foreground here, came about because I was just sitting in my house during quarantine, super stressed out, feeling completely useless to the world. Like I didn't have anything to contribute, and just I had a lot of restless energy. And so I knew that I wanted to kind of get more into collage, more like formally into collage. I have to shout out Thomas Agnew over at Boom Concepts. We were talking earlier in the year, and he was like, you know, I'm surprised you haven't like really done collage yet. And I was like, yeah, you're right. And so I kind of had that conversation reverberating in my brain. And I had a bunch of old work prints that were just kind of sitting there collecting dust. And I also had a bunch of magazines that I had been buying over the years, thinking I might be able to use them, but not having used them yet. And so I was sitting here at my dining room table, just like super frustrated with the state of the world. Um, and I wanted to think about going from like my photo documentary practice, where I'm primarily observing, to doing something where I'm more like articulating my thoughts and my feelings. So I started researching photo montage and collage, doing some refreshers about like composition and thinking about like, okay, like what would I like my aesthetic to be? What's the visual language for this kind of idea that's fleeting for me right now? And so I set a hard boundary. I said, okay, every collage that I create has to incorporate at least one piece of a photo that I've taken. And so with that, I kind of started getting to work. This is called The Trenches. So I'm just gonna say a little bit about each of the 9 pieces. Um, I was thinking about the things that I was frustrated about, particularly in the beginning of quarantine, thinking about folks being on the clock and not being compensated for their time, people being undervalued, overworked, um, while other people line their pockets from their labor. So that kind of brought that about. But this was the first piece that I completed for this series. It's called Cherry Picking, but initially it was going to be called City on a Hill. And what happened was the full series ended up being called City on a Hill. So I was thinking about white supremacy and capitalism, literally like destroying everything in its path and kind of picking apart people's lives. And I was thinking about the violence of systemic racism, how it shows up in policymaking and education, the prison industrial complex, the nonprofit industrial complex, in the art world. And I was thinking about the violence of observing without action. And all of those things felt like they were coming to the forefront, and are coming to the forefront in the past few months. And so I don't even know why I thought about this. I'd heard the term City on a Hill before, but when I started researching a little bit, I found that it's actually a biblical reference. It was initially evoked in kind of popular culture, I guess, or like historicized in 1630 by the Puritan leader John Winthrop. And it was used to frame his vision for a New England colony that would be an example to England and the world of a truly godly society. And then in the 80s, you have Ronald Reagan using it. His framework is, America being like a shining city on a hill, this example to the world of, progress and like all that a society could be. And so as I was composing this image, I was like, okay, let me actually compose a hill. Let me put something up on a hill, but let's get under the hood of like what this city actually is. So I'm thinking, so this is like a fictionalized version of an American city. Maybe it's Pittsburgh, maybe it's like, I don't know, some alternate universe version of Pittsburgh, but I hope that that what's being depicted are things that people can relate to. So again, I'm trying to get underneath what this idealized place is really like. And here, thinking about that biblical reference, it's kind of like the hand of God, maybe reaching out or reaching down, but more so thinking about white supremacy and that kind of destructive force. I'll go more quickly through the other ones. Autopilots, thinking about greed and willful ignorance, and also how there's kind of like this automatic quality to some of these interactions at the top, or at least I imagine, people in the 1% maybe feeling like money or power is guaranteed. So I thought the slide projector was a good way of like evoking kind of like that merry-go-round, things just kind of happening automatically. This playpen, I'll kind of, again, leave these up to your interpretations, but I was thinking a lot about consumerism and excess and indulgence, and kind of what that really means, or like how that really shows up in the world. So Playpen is like a play on like shopping and these playgrounds for the rich. But there's also like a bull. It's like a bull in the china shop. So thinking about like where the bull might live in a pen. As I was going along, kind of like really thinking about all these pitfalls in society and all these frustrations I also started feeling like, that's not really it. Like, I don't feel total despair. I don't feel like nothing good can come of this moment. I actually feel quite hopeful. And so the body of work started to feel incomplete unless I explored the other side of all of the greed and indulgence that I was thinking about. And so, this I kind of see as like a turning point. It's called Make a Break. Keyword here being make. So my good friend Nisha Blackwell and we collaborated on a series a couple of years back called She Made a Way, talking to Black women makers and creative entrepreneurs about, how they construct their careers and about their practices. And I think, when Nisha said the word made, something just clicked for me, because it gives Black women in particular this agency. It says, even in a place that takes and takes and takes from us, like, we still have some control over our lives. Like, we're still out there doing and making things happen. So for me, this image was about, dropping the baggage of the things that oppress us, and like, what would it feel like to go chase after more than what they say we can have, as evidenced by that like little piece of the pie. Off the clock, what would it feel like, or what does it feel like to step away from, the grind of the world into a space that you make, into a space that's comfortable, into a space that's safe. And the ballerina foot, that was kind of like a play on like tap dancing, or like dancing for the man. It's just kind of like, when you get home, you might throw off your bags, you might throw off your clothes, you're exhausted, you're like, the city has beat you up a little bit, but you're able to step into this place of refuge. Coming up roses, thinking about like, what would it feel like for me as a Black person to see like the beauty that I see in us, like reflected all around us. No hangups, no stipulations, just people seeing us how we see ourselves. Jam City, what would it feel like to literally just be in the middle of the city and able to dance like no one's watching, having that freedom, and yeah, like evoking that kind of those carefree feelings. And finally, downtime, thinking about literally what I think there's like a motif of time and like a clock that comes through this work, but what would it be like to just chuck the clock, to say, time is not an object. So to find that place, maybe that physical space in the city, but more so maybe like that place in our minds that we can go to that feels like this, that's serene, that we can take in the view, that we can like sit back, that we can look cute, that we can, have our reading, do whatever we need to do to feel good, and to see ourselves in a positive light. So I think that's more or less it for that. Yeah, that's kind of all I have. You want to hop into this conversation? Excuse me, this conversation?
Yeah, we can do that. So for everybody who is, thank you, first of all, Njaimeh. So for everybody who might have straggled in a bit late, we're gonna just transition to a conversation here, but you are allowed to ask questions. So if you have any questions that pop up and you would like to ask yourself after the conversation, just kind of give a wave and we'll unmute you and you can ask out loud. Or if you'd like to type in a question now in the chat, everybody has access to the chat. Just remember that this is a safe space, so make sure you're respectful and all, and you can virtually raise your hand as well. There's a button there. But yeah, let's jump into it. Thank you for that.
Yeah, no problem. Thanks for coming along with.
Yeah.
Your work has strong composition.
Oh, thank you.
Very good. Very good.
So for those who don't know, how did you kind of get started with your art practice? How did it started? Did you have any artists in your family, like anything like instrumental?
Yeah, my dad is an artist. He's like a multi-hyphenate. He was a multi-hyphenate before that was kind of like a cool thing to be. He's a fine artist, fiber artist. He does batik painting, but he's a photographer, he's a tailor. He just like is literally generally a creative. But my mom also is like a really skilled photographer. Who's freelance for years. So I think seeing both of my parents be in creative fields showed me that it was possible. I just didn't think it was possible for me. Like, it was not something that I ever intended to do. I majored in film in undergrad, but I really wasn't able to do the unpaid internships in New York or LA over a summer. So I actually went into teaching because it was my connection to storytelling. And also I felt like my teachers, particularly my English teachers, poured so much into me that I really felt compelled to pay it forward in some way. But this making thing just kind of wouldn't leave me alone. And so I left the classroom to think about what it would look like for me to not be an artist so much, but like work in media. So when I came back to Pittsburgh, I started like apprenticing / interning with Njaimeh at Your Mom's House. And that's how I learned to produce. And that's where I got my first real hands-on experience, like filming and with equipment. And he kind of helped me, really like gave me the kick in the pants to film my first promo piece for a local singer-songwriter, Jasmine Tate. And then from there, I started doing a few more promo pieces. And then I was asked by Nina formerly from Most Wanted Fine Art, if I would do a residency with them. And I was like, me, like create something of my own? What are you talking about? Like, that felt really overwhelming. But through that Most Wanted residency, that's where the idea for Powered by Grace came from. And then Boom Concepts gave me the opportunity to show Powered by Grace, and things literally just snowballed from there. I got a grant, and then things like kind of went off. That was long-winded. Sorry.
Long-winded. Did you grew up in the Hill, right? Or you were raised in the Hill?
No. Oh. No. I grew up in Stanton Heights. From the age of 2 on, my parents still live there. But with the Hill project, I mean, I did go to Shenley, so I went to school on the Hill, but I was selected for that commission, so that's kind of how I got paired with the Hill. And I just grew up with like a deep appreciation and kind of respect for it, but I didn't grow up there.
So for those who don't know about the project in the Hill, that was 3 years. So did you kind of think that? I'm sure that your work evolves in the span of 3 years and changes in and outside the project and everything. Was there a time where the work took a different course, or was there a time where you thought it wasn't going to happen, or your style was just changing so much that like so much could happen from, it was 2016 till 2019, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah, that was tough. Like, I told my sister probably more than a few times that I thought that project was going to be the end of me. Not because of anything anyone else did. Like, the community was so generous, and like people would talk to me, and OPA was patient with me. I just had a lot of self-doubt. Like, I just felt like I had no idea how I was going to pull together all these threads that I'd collected. And working in the public realm is a little bit different than working like digitally or even in the gallery setting, because it is so public. Like, even each of those installations that was installed, I was filled with like dread the day of the installations, because it's like, is it gonna look the same up on a building as it did on my computer screen? So yeah, I was racked with low self-confidence through that whole project. But I think ultimately it came together, and it's given me a lot more confidence moving forward, just because it was just a huge learning opportunity.
Mm-hmm. And how did it feel once you were done?
I mean, it felt good. I think what felt good about it was I knew, like, on an intellectual level, I guess, what I was hoping to articulate in this project. Like, I saw all these connections between what people were telling me. I saw these connections between what they were telling me to what I was reading in the history books. It was just a matter of like, what does it look like to put this on the wall of a building? Like, what does it look like to put this up in the neighborhood? And so I think that between the installations and the website, that happened, but more so it makes me feel like really humble and proud that people were willing to talk to me, and that people like could see themselves, or people they knew, or people who they didn't know but felt some connection to up on those surfaces, as like a marker of home.
Mm-hmm. And how do these have like an end date, or are they just saying permanently, or do you know if it's being removed?
You're asking the important questions. Yeah, so the program was called, like, the formal title is the Temporary Placemaking and Public Art Program. Mm-hmm. So they were all supposed to be up for, like, I guess a maximum of 2 years. Mm-hmm. So I'm hoping, we're just kind of moving along here. We're past 2 years on one of the installations. So yeah, they can come down if need be, but if folks still want them to be up, then we'll ride it, and as long as we can.
Mm-hmm. And how do you feel about like incorporating archives into your work, and like why is that important to you? And do you feel as if kind of like researching and studying is like a large part of your practice?
It is, and I think yeah, it is. I think it's so important, especially as Black people in a place like Pittsburgh or like Western Pennsylvania or the Rust Belt more generally, mm-hmm. to not just like preserve our lives, but share what has been preserved of our lives. Because chances are it's not going to be in a book. It's not going to be, channel 2, like the CBS affiliate, isn't going to have these like nuanced stories about Black women's lives in X neighborhood, right? Mm-hmm. And so I think that there's so much we can learn from the past. I think that the past is constantly repeating itself until we do something to make it not repeat itself. But I just feel very like touched by the ways that people have documented their lives. I mean, I look at photo albums, I look at the way people kept their like accounting, I look at letters, correspondence, and it's just like our ancestors, and not like 300-year ago ancestors, but them too, but like our recent ancestors 30, 40, 50 years ago understood something about making their mark in the world and like keeping a place for themselves. And I think that we've inherited that. Like, we've inherited such a rich legacy. And what I want to do is like just do whatever little part I can to kind of like bring that stuff to the surface. To show, as Mr. Billy Jackson, Pittsburgh-based filmmaker, I interviewed him a few years ago, and he talked about us being on a continuum. So like, we're not inventing anything. Nothing's brand new. Yeah. We're kind of like picking up where folks have left off and trying to make things better. And I think archives are a big part of how we can do that.
Yeah, that makes sense. Do you feel like do you struggle finding yourself as an artist when you incorporate so many other people or archives in your work, or do you feel like it just serves as a mirror for who you are? And like, you know, how do we see Njaimeh in your work? How do you think?
Yeah, that's a good question. I was kind of having this conversation with David from Silver Eye last week. I think that initially, honestly, I tried really hard not to insert myself into the work. I really was coming at it from more of like a photojournalistic or like documentarian point of view. But when I look back, it's kind of because I didn't think I had anything to say, which feels weird to say. The more I've done this, the more I think I've gotten in touch with my own voice and am a little bit more okay with articulating some of my thoughts and my feelings in my work. Hence this collage series. This is the first time where I'm able to say, like, look, all of this is trash. Like, burn it all down. None of this is sustainable, in a way that I can't necessarily, in ways that I can like hint at with my photos, but like I'm working with what's already there. So I can't necessarily insert myself in the same way. I think what I'm doing with any photographer, and I'm not the first person to say this. I'm actually really sorry. I can't remember who said this, but what we choose to focus on says something about us, because we could be taking pictures of anything, or, you know, taking pictures any type of way. And so hopefully people understand a little bit about me, knowing that I'm looking at Black people and loving Black people in this place that I'm from. And from there, it's just kind of like a constant process of refining my voice in front of, around the lens, like thinking about fresh ways to tell stories to do that.
Yeah, I think it's like we all get to see your gaze a lot, but it is interesting. Like, we get to see the stories that people are kind of sharing with you through your eyes. So that's interesting. But it's interesting that the collage, you're like, no, like, this is my direct voice. This is trash and everything. But you've done a couple projects, like big projects in the city, like TED Talks and things like that. What was the TED Talk like, and what was your favorite project that you kind of jumped on so far?
The TEDx talk was terrifying. My stomach drops when I think about it, to be honest.
Really?
Yeah, I was so nervous.
Was it fun?
Huh?
Was it fun at all?
That is not the word I would use for that. Out of all the words.
You heard it here first.
Be my friend. No. So here's what I'll say. The folks at TEDx Pittsburgh know what they're doing. They did everything to support me and all of us who were on the docket that night. I had two friends, Anquinique Kinzel and Liana Manise, who were, you know, performing and speaking that same night. And we're back, you know, like in the green room. And had it not been for them, I think I might have, and also Hannah, shout out to Hannah, the makeup artist, I probably would have fainted when I got off that stage. It took me 2 gin and tonics to calm down.
This is the real story behind TED Talk.
Yeah, I was very, very nervous. But I felt good afterwards. It was like a sense of accomplishment. And, you know, just, I think some of that anxiety was just coming from like knowing it's going to be documented in a certain way, and hoping, you know, I'm articulating like myself, and hoping I'm articulating myself in a way that like I would stand by down the line, but also hoping that by showing my work, I'm like representing the communities that I'm a part of and that I'm documenting in like an honest light, in a way that feels true to like who they are and how they're trying to move through the world.
Yeah. Do you feel like at the end of the day, kind of like what we were talking about a few minutes ago, your voice you got your voice to be able to punch through, and you got maybe to people kind of see through your lens what you're trying to share through your art in that talk? Or like, what did you kind of go over?
Yeah, I mean, I talked about like the importance of like looking back, and why I think it's so important for each of us, like as individuals, to document our own stories, because when we put together our stories, that collective story is how we know like how life was in a certain time. That's how we know what we valued, you know, what we believed in, who we were. And so I think if all of us can do that, right? And each successive generation can do that. We'll always have a record beyond the academy, beyond the media of like who we really were. So yeah, that was the gist of it.
That's good. So answer my second part of my question. What were some of your favorite things besides that?
Oh, yeah, I would say the homecoming project. I feel like very, very glad about that. I did a project that I guess we could talk more about like down the line or not, but called Tracing Water, Memory, and Change. So it was a photo essay, but kind of like an oral history
Just around
representation.
65?
Yeah, of Black people's experiences along in the neighborhoods and communities along Route 65, which is a long, medium stretch of highway here in Western Pennsylvania. So that was cool. That was like received really well. So that was good. And yeah, I mean, I have a job that I'm like really blessed to do. Like I get to talk to people and take pictures and tell stories. So yeah, I mean, all of it, I feel, proud to have been associated with, I think.
Yeah. I feel as if, maybe we both can relate on this plane, I'm sure. So, being, a Black woman artist in Pittsburgh, in spite of getting all of these opportunities, which are all really exciting and have been pivotal to your success, what are some pushbacks that you felt like you had to overcome to kind of, it's hard to kind of make sure our voices, specifically Black women voices, are seen and heard in the art scene in Pittsburgh, and even the art scene is pretty, it's not as mixy as people think it is, all the time. And, if we're being real.
Yeah, it's real. And I think, yeah, I've had a largely positive experience, but I think that's partially because I'm not necessarily subscribed to just like being an artist. Like,
right.
I think I'm in like multiple communities. Like, I feel like I'm in community with people who aren't in the arts world. Also, my family's here. So I'm not necessarily like all in to any one space, or even any one discipline. Because to your point of things not being like necessarily super mixy, the street photo world is different than the fine art photo world. Yeah. There's the filmmaking world. There's there's all these organizations, so things can get very fractured. But I do think I'm a little bit lucky in that I've been able to kind of like get to know people and like actually build genuine relationships. And that's kind of how I moved through the space. But I mean, to be clear, like, yeah, it's challenging. I mean, it's challenging being a Black woman, period. But I think one of the things I'm constantly thinking of is like, am I going to be the token? Am I going to be the only one? And not wanting to do that or be that. And so like now I'm trying to be like even more intentional about like, oh, okay, you want to talk to me? Also, you're going to have to talk to
exactly.
This is right here.
Mm-hmm.
I'm trying to get to that. And also like, oh, you want to like spotlight me? Well, that's fine. But like,
why?
What more can come of this beyond a post that's going to be forgotten in a day? And I think other people are doing this work. I think I'm thinking of several people off the top of my head who are like constantly like, I mean, they say like lifting as, lift as you climb. That's an established phrase, but people who are like digging out the path and like bringing other people along too. And the path, so much has been paid for me. Like I could think off the top of like 30 Black women artists, contemporaries and, elders, ancestors who I wouldn't be in this Zoom call if they weren't here and if they didn't do their work. So I think it's just a matter of like for me, it's really important to stay connected to like Black folks and in community with the folks that I'm in community with. And that helps me be able to like tolerate and navigate all the other stuff.
Yeah, that makes sense. It is hard to be a Black woman, period. But no, I feel you. It's like, but even in the different worlds that you can exist in, you know, art world, film world, everything, there's still pushback. And it is hard once you kind of realize that you might be like a diversity point, you know, or the token, you know what I mean? It's like, as you're getting successes, you know, you kind of go in your head, like, do these people want to work with me because I'm, you know, gaining traction or because I'm Black? You know?
And there's all, I mean, I feel like, you know, probably a lot of us have been dealing with that for a whole lot of our lives. But I think for me, it's like two things. It's my mother is Valerie Njie. If you know her, you know her. If you don't, now you do. She has never given less than 150% for anything she's ever done in her life. And so I think that kind of like work ethic is in me. So if I get an opportunity, like I'm going to try my best, like I'm going to try to maximize it. But also, again, like I said, trying to bring other people along, trying to like engage other folks. So even if I'm the only like Black person in the room, I'm not the only Black person in the space.
Exactly.
If that makes sense.
It does. Yeah, exactly. I have one more question, and then we're gonna open up to the floor. So you've been documenting Danielle Brown's like her, you know, hunger strike and everything. How did that come about for you to kind of document, and how has it been, you know, on the other side, behind the lens? And for those of you who don't know, can you give them a quick overview of what's going on? And I'm sure that's been super emotionally pulling for you as well.
Yeah, I can speak a little bit to that. So I won't say too much because I think Danielle has said a lot for herself, and I would encourage folks to kind of like check out, you know, what she's saying. But Danielle Brown is a Black woman from Washington, D.C. Her son, Marcus Jalen Brown, was a student athlete at Duquesne. He was a football player who died in October of 2018 on campus. Trigger warning. His death was pretty much immediately ruled a suicide, but she since then has had questions about what exactly went down, particularly thinking about the fact that there were several like police officers in the dorm room at the time that he perished. And so she has come to Pittsburgh. She's now on day 20 of a hunger strike and a sit-in, trying to get answers from the university. She's demanding that the case be reopened so that she can get a private investigation, demanding that police officers on campus, or public safety officers, police officers, wear body cameras and that they be turned on, and also that they be trained in how to properly respond when folks are maybe having some sort of like mental health crisis or are in distress. And so last I heard, they were like extremely close to, she was extremely close to having those demands met, but she's looking for like full transparency from the university, and I don't quite think they're there yet. So you know, if you Google Danielle Brown, that's two N's, Dannielle Brown, Duquesne, you'll find out, you know, there's a GoFundMe, there's a Cash App for her that you can donate to, because she did take a leave of absence to come here and go on this hunger strike. And I think the question is, how long is this Black mother gonna have to starve to get answers for what happened to her child? So my sister told me about this. If you're texting me, stop texting as it goes off. But my sister told me about Danielle's hunger strike. She's our sorority sister. We're members of Delta Sigma Theta Sorority Incorporated. So we both went that first day. She was probably on, say, like 5 or 6, I want to say, at that point. And so we were just going back subsequent days, sitting with her for a little bit. And I just asked her if I could, take a few pictures to document what was going on. And that's kind of where we are. Last major thing I documented was an action 2 weekends ago where we marched from Freedom Corner to Duquesne, and she spoke in front of the hall where her son passed away. And yeah, I think everyone should educate themselves about what's going on, and just, it's really an incredible thing that she's doing. Just like, I think it's such a brave thing, and so much love personified. So yeah.
So we can take a couple questions from folks who do want to ask by unmuting themselves. There are a couple questions here in this chat, so thank you to those of you who typed those in. You can type in a question, and I might get to a few, but after these, I read these questions out loud. We're just probably going to wrap up. But if you would like to ask Njaimeh a question, which is encouraged, let's connect in this age of social distancing. Just kind of give a wave and we can unmute you here.
These are good questions. Thank you all. So should I just take some of the questions?
Well, first we're going to see if anybody wants to ask a question.
Oh,
so,
listening. It's important.
It's okay. Does anybody, Nicole can, actually you should all be able to unmute yourself. So if anybody wants to jump in here. All right. So this question here on the side says, have you ever collaborated with your parents, or do you want to?
That'd be cool. Yeah, me and my dad used to collaborate circa like 92 when he was teaching me how to draw and batik. Hopefully so I did a short film. I made a short film about my dad, who is from the Gambia, West Africa. So the film was about him using his artwork and his cooking to bridge the gap between like Africans and Americans. Hopefully got some collaborations with my mom coming down the pike, but TBD. To be determined.
We've just done jobs together.
Yeah, we've worked on things, but
yes, this mom in the flesh, Val, is in the flesh. Yes, mom on the Zoom call.
Hey, mom.
Vanya says, after creating work for your most recent show, do you feel a little bit more lifted now than you did before?
I do. Thank you. Shout out to Vanya.
Shout out to Vanya. Vanya's coming.
Artist, painter, photographer who took our headshots for our brew house cohort. So if you need any portraits, you know who to go to. But yeah, I really did. It felt like very therapeutic to have something to almost like work like a job. I mean, it took me several weeks to kind of put everything together. So it was nice to have that feeling of productivity again. So thank you.
Would anybody else like to jump out loud?
Sure, I've got a question.
Paper, go ahead.
Hey, hi Njaimeh.
Hey, Paper.
Such an amazing talk. Thank you so much for sharing so much with us tonight. Yeah, I guess I had two questions and they're a little bit disparate. The first one is, you mentioned earlier that you had some hard times during the pandemic, like many of us, but that you'd come to a hopeful place. And I was sort of curious to hear like what in this political, social moment is making you feel hopeful. And I also was curious to ask you about like the transition towards kind of using collage more in your work, as far as what you presented tonight, and kind of that transition from like still frame to more collaged compositions. Yeah.
Thanks, Paper. So I made a big oversight. So I have to shout out Paper. We're in a group show together called Counter Pressures that's currently up at the Carnegie Museum of Art. Paper is a really brilliant artist who is also using like archiving and photo and research and many other things that I can't possibly, do justice for. So yes, so shout out to Paper. Counter Pressures up through the end of the year, actually through January at the CMOA. to your questions, I think what's making me feel hopeful is the fact that, well, seeing like young people kind of like rise up, as young people have done throughout history, and just like push back against the status quo and like push the envelope a little bit, maybe even further than we've seen before, is inspiring. Seeing these conversations about things that were maybe whispered before, or maybe that weren't shared by the chorus, is encouraging. So the fact that, like, you know, we could be talking about white supremacy and racism and down with the patriarchy and capitalism in like pretty casual conversation is encouraging. But I think there's a next step, right? To go past just the reading or past the chatting about it, and like, what are people actually gonna do? How are you gonna put your money where your mouth is? And so I am hopeful that we'll kind of get to that point. And the second question, what prompted the collage? I think as a medium, I've always been like interested in it. There have been a few artists here that I really respect who do collage as one of their primary mediums. So I always kind of was looking like enviously, like, dang, I wish I could do that too. So I just wanted to give it a try. But really it was kind of like, sometimes limitations breed opportunity, I guess, or like abundance. So because I couldn't go out, and I wasn't going out. I wasn't really trying to be out like photographing people in the middle of a pandemic. It was like, how can I work with what I already have, and how can, like, on a physical level, like the materials I have, but also like, how can I repurpose these pictures that I've been looking at, these pictures that I took in one context, how can I recontextualize them to make new meaning? And I think that's what came out of quarantine.
Sweet, thanks so much.
Thanks, Paper.
It's like unshocking that you're also so good at these collages. You know, they're so beautiful. I like them a lot.
I appreciate that. Can I make a plug here?
Plug.
So our group show at, our distiller group show at the Brewhouse Association, everybody has work for sale. So
tell us the hours and the days.
Okay. Oh man. Okay.
Come on, if you're gonna plug,
Natalie, happen.
We're open Thursdays 2 to 7 p.m. as well as Fridays and Saturdays 11 to 4. And we're really encouraging people to make private appointments with us as well. If you don't feel comfortable in any way showing up for public hours, it's, we have a pretty big airy space. It hasn't been too crowded. But feel free to reach out. You can email me. I'll put the email in the chat if you want to set up a private appointment too.
Hi, Natalie. Imani says, how are you recharging yourself these days?
Hey, girl. Oh, yeah. Also, Imani Jahan is like a really brilliant stylist and kind of doing archiving in her own way with clothes. But how am I recharging myself? Honestly, I'm not really.
Relatable, yeah.
Like, doing a poor job of that right now. I'd like to be one of those people. Well, my dad tells me to meditate and to do my stretching and my yoga. And I try that, I really do. But some mornings I get up and I'm like, I want food more than I want to do my yoga right now. So that's what happens. But yeah, I'm trying to get more sustainable routines down to like take care of myself better, but it's a lot going on. Stressful times, so it's a work in progress.
Yeah. We will take one more question physically for anybody who wants to unmute themselves. Okay.
Oh, can I answer Nisha's question real quick?
You sure can. It's your topic.
Also, buy masks from Knots Land, formerly bow ties, but now they're doing more mask making than bow tie making. Nisha Blackwell, founder. She's asking what are my my favorite and least favorite parts of this body of work. and thank you for the love on it. My most favorite was just kind of trying something new. That was exciting because it was like a challenge, but something that I was like approaching like very anxiously, in a good way, good anxious. And least favorite, I don't think I have a least favorite part. It was just like a really nice opportunity to experiment and try in like a safe environment. And I'm grateful that we have this brew house show. It was like a really nice place to land with this new work. So thank you, girl, for the question.
Thank you so much for answering.
The voice.
Also, like another part, I didn't really know how to word it, but what lessons will you take and what bits of this work will you take into the future?
You would ask like a really hard question.
Sorry.
I think it encourages me to be more courageous and like to experiment throughout my practice. I'm always trying to push myself, but this is I appreciate the response to this body of work. People have really generously received it. So it's kind of like, even if that didn't happen, I was already proud of myself for doing it because it looked good to my eye. So the fact that other people also enjoy it is validating, but it's not the thing. I appreciate it, but I made this. I feel proud of myself for making something for myself.
Yes.
And that's shout out to Lakeisha Wolf, Njaimeh Collective, another Black woman owned and operated business to support. But she was the first person to really kind of like articulate that thinking in a way that resonated with me. So yeah, I think it's important that we make things that fill us up first, and it's kind of like a bonus when other people vibe with it too.
Yeah. How can we?
I have a question.
Sure, go ahead.
Some of us haven't been out and about much recently. So how will we be able to see your show without actually going there?
That is a good question, Mom. So we're putting together a video, like a virtual tour of the exhibition, which will be shared on the interwebs. And then you can contact the gallery in terms of like sales, if that's something you're interested in, or you can reach out to the individual artists to follow up with their work more and follow along with them in their artistic journeys. Thank you.
Besides the brew house show, the question just to wrap up the call is how can we directly support you at this time? Or is there anything else that we can look out for, anything that we can do to support you directly?
I appreciate that question. I would say not so much. I mean, I have projects like coming down the line, but I can't necessarily share about them yet. But so I'll be keeping busy. But I do appreciate this question. I will say, so that that Route 65 piece that I did, Tracing Water, Memory, and Change, that's going to be included in an anthology about Blackness in the Rust Belt called Black in the Middle. It's edited by Terrion Williamson, and it actually comes out. It comes out on September 1st. That's when you can buy it. So that first picture that I showed in my slides, that's actually the cover of the book. And the essay is included in the book as well. So I'll probably be sharing more about that. But there's some really dynamic writers and thinkers in that anthology. So I'm excited to be a part of that. And yeah, Counter Pressures at the museum.
Counter Pressures.
And yeah, we're just gonna try to keep this going.
And we have your prints at the shop.
Yes, sorry.
No, it's okay. That was my job. That was my job.
Support Small Mall, not just my prints, but like our whole cohort has work for sale at Small Mall, and many other like really brilliant local artists. So yeah, if you'd like to pick up, I have some like 8x10 photos at Small Mall for sale. But yeah, check them out because they're doing like really amazing work, and I'm grateful for the opportunity to have work there and also to have this conversation with you.
Definitely. And Nisha, just, shout out to your girl. Just put your Venmo in there for everybody to see. So get those direct funds. That's something that I would do, Nisha. So
that's so funny. I could be, wow, y'all are coming on big here at the end. Yes. Okay. You don't have to Venmo me anything, but there are people on this call that you can be supporting. Like I said, Nisha with Knotsland. I think Atia is on this call. Atia Jones,
yes.
like really brilliant maker. Imani Jahan, Vania, like scroll through all these thumbnails. There's a lot of really dynamic Black women making things on this call. Sorry, I probably misspoke. My bad, y'all. But yeah. Oh, my sister asked if I have a website. I do have a website. It's my name, NjaimehNjie.com. But you gotta spell it.
Everybody, you want to give your little virtual claps, your jazz hands, whatever you need to do. Thank you so much, Njaimeh, for all
Thank you all.
Thank you for everybody who tuned in. Like we said, and Njaimeh's work isn't in the shop. If you guys aren't feeling coming in physically, that's a-okay. We have an online store. You can just go smallmallpgh.com. That's available for you to shop online 24/7. We are open weekends, like I said at the beginning, if you missed it, Friday through Sunday, 11 a.m. to 4 p.m. Our next couple of talks, we have Thomas Waters, July 30th. And then Vanya, who's actually on this call, is going to be our first photo fair Tiny Talk in August. So prepare, come support another Black woman artist in this game. But yeah, we hope to see you all at Small Mall. So not only can you buy Njaimeh's work, but we have work from 40 other Pittsburgh artists. We only sell Pittsburgh artists and regional artists in the shop. But thank you to everybody on this call. We'll wave out and just kind of wave it till everybody's gone. Thank you, Njaimeh.
Thank you all so much.
Yes.
Really appreciate it.